Man, it feels like just yesterday, Clemson had Deshaun Watson as their star quarterback, and he ended up leading them to a national championship victory. Clemson then landed Trevor Lawrence, and he was supposed to be the next big thing, which honestly he still was, but sandwiched between those two was a guy who was also given a ridiculous amount of hype. His name was Kelly Bryant. He ended up becoming the starter for the Tigers back in 2017, and after a little bit of time in 2018 was eventually benched in favor of Trevor, and then Kelly would end up washing out at Mizzou. For a guy who was at one point considered a Heisman contender and the next great Clemson quarterback, what the heck ended up happening to him? Well, in today's video, we're going to do a typical Scott Fisher deep dive and go back in time and talk about how Kelly Bryant overcame crazy odds to be a big-time recruit to begin with, his time at Clemson, and why it didn't work out for him either in Mizzou or at Clemson, and also what he's doing now. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about what happened to Kelly Bryant. Before Kelly Bryant was a household name amongst diehard college football fans, he was just a young kid growing up in South Carolina where football is a pretty big deal. His family legacy actually helped him out quite a lot, as his cousin was actually former Clemson and Pittsburgh Steelers star Martavis Bryant. Kelly ended up growing up loving the game of football, more specifically the quarterback position. When he finally got to high school, he wanted to win, and that is exactly what he did. He led the Panthers to a state championship in 2011 and another appearance in 2012. Winning was not an issue for him, but he knew he needed to go elsewhere in order to succeed more. He wanted to be recruited more, so he transferred to Wren High School, where he could play in a spread style of offense. It turns out it was a good decision. On the third carry of his career there, he took a run 75 yards to the house, and the coaches all knew that he was very special. That was only the beginning, as Kelly ended up throwing for 2,800 yards and 28 touchdowns, and had another 1,200 yards and 19 scores on the ground. During his senior year, he got even better, throwing for a school record 3,500 yards and 41 touchdowns, and 700 yards and 14 scores on the ground. And because of all this, he was considered a hot commodity on the recruiting market, and it looked like the sky was truly the limit for him. Except this is where the Kelly Bryant story almost ended. Bryant was playing basketball for the high school when apparently a stomach bug had been going around. During halftime of a game, Kelly had been vomiting and he was taken to the hospital to get checked out. They ended up finding a softball-sized abscess in his abdomen, and if it had exploded, it could have killed him. They ended up performing the life-saving surgery on Kelly, and he eventually made a full recovery because of it. He'd have to hold an embarrassing bag around the school, but it didn't stop him from throwing the ball in practice and being with the team. He also developed a special bond with a Down syndrome student from the school, and he was the type of person that any program would want. Chad Morris, the then offensive coordinator at Clemson, was very faithful to Kelly despite him being ill, and Bryant would eventually commit to the Clemson Tigers, and he definitely fit the Clemson vibe. He had made a full recovery, and had helped develop a love for both the game of football and everyday life. He was now going to be able to play football at the highest collegiate level, and according to 24/7 Sports, Kelly was a borderline 4-star recruit, was the number 13 dual-threat quarterback, and the 420th best player in the class of 2015. So how would Kelly end up doing at Clemson? Well, he came into Clemson as a backup to superstar Deshaun Watson, and he was not going to play much because of that. During both 15 and 16, he completed 13 of 19 passes for 75 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Going into 2017, many saw Kelly as the successor, but he would get a test from incoming 5-star recruit Hunter Johnson. Hunter Johnson was from Brownsburg, Indiana, and was seen as the next big thing, and he would end up flipping from Tennessee to Clemson and was given an immediate amount of hype. Johnson was not very good though, as he would eventually transfer to Northwestern and would sit on the pine while he was there. So Kelly was going to be the guy, but how was this going to go? Well, nobody really knew what he was going to do his first year starting, and he did kind of surprise some people. He became a real dual-threat quarterback and added a new dynamic to the offense alongside Travis Etienne at running back. He'd have his best game of the year against number 14 Louisville, where he threw for 316 yards and a touchdown, while rushing for 26 more and 2 scores on the ground. He was really good, and Clemson was rolling for the most part until a weird road game against Syracuse. Kelly would end up getting injured, and the Orange would actually go on to upset them and win the game. He finished the year with wins over number 20 NC State and number 24 South Carolina, and they were now headed to the ACC Championship game. They now got to the ACC Championship game where they played against the Cinderella 2017 Miami Hurricanes, and they would thrash them. Clemson went 12-1 and were good enough for a spot in the college football playoff. They were a 1 seed and would end up playing the 4 seed Alabama in the first round, but Bryant and the Tigers would have a bad game, and they got killed 24-6 by the Crimson Tide. On the year, Bryant passed for 2,800 yards with 13 touchdowns and 8 picks, with nearly 700 yards and 11 scores on the ground. He was definitely solid, but with a blue-chip quarterback coming in, his time may have been limited. Not even just a blue chip, this guy was a prodigy. Coming out of Georgia, Trevor Lawrence was seen as the top guy in his class and someone who was surely going to go to the NFL and was the best quarterback coming into high school in quite some time. He was going to be the backup, but for how long? Kelly was the starter, but Trevor ended up getting snaps, and Clemson almost lost a game to Texas A&M in the process. They ended up going back and forth, but eventually Trevor was named the starter and Kelly was kicked to the curb. There was kind of some controversy with that, and Kelly decided he would head elsewhere. He decided to enter the transfer portal for the 2019 season and had a couple of schools in mind. After narrowing his list to Mizzou, Arkansas, Auburn, North Carolina, and Mississippi State, he eventually decided to join the Mizzou program, and as a Mizzou fan, I thought this was a huge deal. Kelly said, quote, "This being my first time in Missouri, I kinda joked. I really didn't know what to expect, but once I got there and saw it firsthand, I was like, I might be alright. I could see myself here, and ever since that Missouri visit, they were on my heart wherever I went, so I took a chance and decided to be a Tiger." He was set to come in and replace one of the best quarterbacks in school history, as Drew Lock had just finished his time in Columbia. Kelly had a decent amount of hype, but there was going to be no bowl game due to a weird postseason ban by a rogue tutor situation, which was really stupid, and Kelly probably knew he made the wrong decision after his first career start. That would come against the Wyoming Cowboys, where he did throw for a career-high 423 yards, but Mizzou lost a stupid game on the road to Wyoming 37-31, and this one definitely hurt, as the season was over. Kelly and the Tigers would bounce back though, as they won their next 5 games, including wins over West Virginia, South Carolina, and Ole Miss, and they were now ranked. Unfortunately, Mizzou would play their worst game of the year, as they lost 21-14 on the road to a bad Vanderbilt team, and combining that with an injury to Kelly, the season went off the rails and became a mess. Mizzou did beat Arkansas to finish at 6-6, but it was a disaster of a year, and Kelly did not help his stock much. He threw for 2,200 yards with 15 touchdowns and 6 picks, and just looked lost at times. You can add in the fact that Derek Dooley and Barry Odom were not the best coaches in the world, and that was a bad way for him to end his college career. He was not expected to be an NFL QB after the season, and went undrafted by the end of it. He did in fact get a tryout with the Arizona Cardinals, but was never going to be an NFL guy. Here's what a fan-sided article had to say about Kelly. From a football perspective, he just wasn't good enough. His record at Clemson was because he was carried by an incredible roster. His shortcomings were never magnified until he faced a team like Bama in the Sugar Bowl, and then he was exposed. Not only did the coaching staff know it, but so did NFL scouts. Kelly Bryant was simply not that good of a quarterback. He transferred to the SEC and would regress across the board in areas that NFL teams would judge and evaluate. As we saw in 2019 at Mizzou, Kelly Bryant did not elevate the play of those around him, and his team would pay dearly for the mistakes he made during the game. This was about Kelly lacking the natural instincts that a quarterback has to have, and he never had the right internal clock in the immeasurables. What's funny though is Kelly got a lot of hype. He was seen as the next big thing at Clemson, and he definitely had a great story while he was there. Since then, Kelly's been trying to make his way around professional football, as after he went undrafted in 2020 and that tryout didn't work at Arizona, he would sign with Toronto of the CFL, and then he'd eventually go spend 1 month with the Bismarck Bucks. That was the indoor football league. In 2022, he'd play fan-controlled football as he was with the Zappers of that league, and actually had a couple of really fun games in that one. Since then, in April of 2023, he'd signed with the Arlington Renegades of the XFL, and he would not end up making the roster going into 2024 for them. One other really interesting note is that Kelly Bryant also tried out for WWE, so he was just trying to do a little bit of everything. He played football in Canada, he played in the fan-controlled world, and he did even get a small opportunity to go to the NFL with that tryout with the Cardinals, but Bryant was just never able to put it all together. As I've said repeatedly, he just didn't have the instincts, he didn't have that it factor, and for the most part, he was just seen as a good game manager. He was exposed at Mizzou, but a lot of that in my opinion should be blamed on the dysfunction at Mizzou, but Bryant was also just never in the right system there either. He definitely was a big name at one point, but that is what happened and what went wrong for Kelly Bryant. Except, what do you guys think? If you're a Clemson or a Mizzou fan, what the heck went wrong for Kelly Bryant and why was he not able to make it work? And what other iconic or random quarterback should I cover in my next What Happened To video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you can support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.